not presently, but they were taken care of previously, weren't they? God was taking care of them even while they were not probably thinking of Him so much. They were just working as slaves, and even though He had brought them out into this barren area where they are now, and by the way, where are they specifically at this time? Do you remember? That place is okay. Wilderness of Sin. They're getting very close to Mount Sinai, just in the area there of Horeb. So they are, as I stated just a moment ago, being taken care of from the standpoint that God is providing for their livelihood. And what did we study Sunday morning that shows us that, Brother Billy?
Well, the manna and the quail, and then the battle with the
Amalekites, right, that's right. The Amalekites came out and attacked them really from the rear, didn't they? And Joshua chose out men and went, and the Lord fought for them. And how was it, what was the sign of the prevailing of that battle?
When Moses' hands were held up by Aaron and Hur.
All right, so as long as Moses had that staff in his hand and held it up, then Israel prevailed. And if he let his hand down, then Amalek prevailed. And so, as Murphy suggested, Aaron and Hur, who was the son of, who was her son of? Judah. As long as they set him down on a stone, set Moses on a stone, and held his hands up so that Judah, rather not Judah, but Israel would prevail. And so that brings us to Exodus chapter 18 this evening, where we talk about Moses and Jethro. And Jethro was what?
He was a priest of Midian.
Okay, priest of Midian. Also Moses' father-in-law. What name do we know him by previously? Reuel, okay. All right. Was there anything else about him that was important? What about the fact that he was able, and of course we haven't talked about this yet, but in our lesson this evening we learned that he is able to advise Moses, isn't he? How did they first meet? Billy?
Moses met his daughter, watering the flock. It said that an Egyptian had watered the flock for him. That's why they had come back early.
All right. Sam, that's right. And so he basically says, well, where is he? Why didn't you bring him home with you? And so they went back and got him, and then Moses found a home there, didn't he? In the land with Reuel, and at that particular time, he had those daughters, and he gave Zipporah to him as a wife. So that's what we learned and are reminded about this evening. But Jethro had heard how God had blessed the Israelites, how he had taken them from being slaves and had brought them out of Egypt. And no doubt before Moses took Zipporah and his sons and left the land of Midian, he had spoken to Jethro. And the scriptures do tell us that he spoke to Jethro and said, listen, God has something for me to do. And Jethro says, go. And so no doubt they talked about some of the details, or at least what Moses would have known. And he sees that God indeed has brought them out with a high hand, which means what?
They got help. The Egyptians helped them to go.
Right. Gave them whatever they needed. And we've talked about those items that they came out with. And we'll continue to mention that as we go along. But then Jethro comes out of the land of Midian, and he comes to visit them down in the wilderness of Sin, which is not too awfully far from where Jethro lives, relatively speaking. And he takes Zipporah and Gershom and Eliezer, and they go and they visit with Moses. And so from what I can tell in the reading of the scripture, and you tell me if I'm wrong about this, it seems to me that Moses is very near Mount Horeb or Mount Sinai, and perhaps Zipporah and the sons are back, maybe with maybe with some of Aaron's relatives or some other Moses' relatives or whatever. And it seems that to me that Jethro got them and took them to see Moses. At least that's the way I read it. If that's not, please correct. If that's not the way it is, please correct me. But then Moses greets him, and they sit down and they ask one another about their welfare. How are you doing? And you know, no doubt Moses is saying, you will not believe what God has done for us. You will not believe how he brought us out of Egypt. You will not believe those plagues that he brought upon that country. And would you believe it that he massacred Pharaoh and all of his charioteers and all the horses and all of that there at the bottom of the Red Sea? And the Lord told me to stretch this rod right here, Jethro, over the sea, and it parted. And he told me to stretch that rod over the sea again, and it came together. And you can just, in our vernacular, I'm thinking he's sitting there, can you believe that? It was an amazing thing. And so Moses just recites everything God had done for them. And so after Moses had told Jethro all that Jehovah had done for them, Jethro rejoiced. That's a great and wonderful thing, because not only is he seeing Moses and his family prosper at the hand of Jehovah, he's seeing Jehovah being lifted up and exalted above mankind and above all of the so-called gods and idols of the world. And one of the things that Jehovah said when Pharaoh started coming out of Egypt after the Israelites is that I will have what?
I'll get me glory.
I'll get me honor and I'll get me glory upon Pharaoh when this occurs. And so Jethro goes on and blesses Jehovah for caring for Moses and his family and for the Israelites as well. And he sacrificed unto Jehovah. And so, I wish I knew a little bit more about Jethro. It's really not important to the story, though, is it? Really not important to the revelation. But I wonder if Jethro maybe wasn't, that priest of Midian wasn't, a priest of God. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. But we do know one thing. We know that Jethro learned exactly who Jehovah was, if he didn't already know. And so, while Jethro was there visiting with them, Moses begins to judge the people. And as I read in the American Standard Translation and the New American Standard Translation, it's almost like this is just something that Moses does every day. This is just my job. This is just what I do. And so what was he doing specifically?
He was worshiping God specifically. He was doing what God told him to do, which means he was honoring God.
Okay.
And showed his faith in God. And I guess in some way of putting it, he worshiped God by doing as God commanded.
Okay.
Is that what you're looking for?
Well, it's building that, but you're on the right track. And a part of that was judging his people. Right? And so in regard to that, what level of judgment was Moses passing?
The minor stuff, he was handling all of it himself, and it was overwhelming him.
Yes.
And he needed some help.
And so every little thing, every big thing, and everything in between, if someone wanted a judgment, they came to Moses. So here's the man that has control over all of what's going on through, or he's the medium we could say, through whom God controls his people or rules his people. He doesn't control them like puppets, but he rules them. And so Moses is the one that metes out all that judgment. And so this day the people stood before him from morning until evening. I don't know how long Moses had been doing this, maybe even before they had left Egypt. Certainly when they left Egypt and up until this point in time. And so this is going on for the better part of 2.5 months now. And so Jethro notices this. And so he said, what you need to do, Moses, is you need to teach the people the law. You know, it's kind of like that thing where we say, rather than just feeding somebody, let's teach them how to provide for themselves, you know. Instead of giving them fish, just teach them to fish.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what Jethro's suggestion was. And he said, teach them the law of God so that you'll not be worn out from judging all these things. And further than that, if Jehovah approves of this, then he should have the upright. What have I got there? Jethro told Moses that if Jehovah approves, he should have the upright, that is the men, the elders and others, judge over the smaller things. And so in verse 21 of chapter 18, he says, have able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating unjust gain, have them rule over the people. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the deacons, or the men that were chosen in Acts chapter 7, you know, to rule over the things of the church. Yes,
Yeah,
George?
that was pretty much what I was going to say, something about Stephen and all the others that were chosen that day to, before he through Paul and Peter, told them specifics about being elders and deacons. Right. But that almost sounded exactly like they would be 7 men that were filled with the Spirit to take care of these things. Yeah.
Right. And so God has always wanted men of faith, men that fear him, men that obey him, to take care of his business. And so he approved that would be done as Jethro had suggested to Moses. And so Moses then appointed rulers of thousands. He appointed rulers of hundreds. He appointed rulers of 50s. And he even approved rulers of 10s. And so you can see how that every little detail that might come up that they might have a question about, they could be taught about that and a judgment could be made. And so that gets down to the individual, doesn't it? When you're talking about those that judge over 10s. And so that was important for them to recognize, important for them, for the people themselves to learn, and important for these men, to be who they should be and guide over those people. And so let them share the burden. Jethro further advised Moses to judge over the great things only, so that he would be able to bear it and the people could live in peace. So there would be things that would be great. For example, in the days of Solomon, and now this is getting past Moses, but in the days of Solomon, you remember there were 2 women who had children, and one of the mothers rolled over on her child and smothered it, and she took the other woman's child and replaced her child with it. And so they had to go before Solomon, and get the decision that was made on that. That would be a great thing. That would be something that a judge over 10 would not want to deal with. And so those issues like that. Maybe there was an ox that gored someone. That would be a big thing. So That, it wouldn't be, how much manna is enough, That Moses doesn't need to deal with that. And so that's what was done. And it's important to notice that Jethro said, this is how you pursue peace. This is how you provide for peace among the people. And so Moses did that. Jethro departed from them to his own land, and that's how chapter 18 ends. Now, we noticed this map on Sunday morning, one similar to it. I think maybe you can see this one a little bit better, but I did not point out specifically where they think Rephidim is, somewhere down here. But generally speaking, the Sinai Peninsula, by conservative thinking, stood between the Gulf of Aqaba and the Gulf of Suez. And so they would have traveled down across the Gulf of Suez, traveled down south, and Mount Sinai was down very close to where those two gulfs come together. And of course, we've seen other maps, but I think this is the most accurate one as far as scholars and conservative thinkers are talking about in connection with that. So they would be somewhere down in that area at almost the very southern point of where those two gulfs spread out from the Red Sea. Now, before we go into chapter 19, I want us to notice on page 42 in our material here that the Waldrons have noted some times where the Israelites have murmured. And we've talked about this, not to this particular detail, but we've talked about this in previous classes. So let's look at that paragraph in between, right in the middle there, that second paragraph. Note the times when the Israelites murmured. They murmured when they reached the Red Sea and saw Pharaoh's army behind them. And God solved that issue by retreating the pillar of cloud between the Egyptians and the Israelites, to keep that buffer zone, to keep them away from them until it was time. They murmured when they reached Marah and the water was bitter. The Lord remedied that by telling Moses to cut this sapling and throw it into the water, and it made the bitter water sweet. They murmured when their food was gone by the time they got to the wilderness of sin. So he provided, as we mentioned earlier, when Brother Billy said he gave them manna and he gave them quail. Now, what does manna mean?
What is it?
What is it? Yeah. Or maybe we would say today, I don't know. This is something we've never seen before, is what they were saying. And then they murmured when they found no water at Rephidim. And what was it that, and this may be a little tricky if you think about this now, because we had both accounts Sunday morning. I gave one account, and then Brother Albert gave the other account in his lesson. What was it that Moses was to do at Rephidim?
He was supposed to speak to the rock.
All right. Not at Rephidim. Rephidim, he was to strike it with the rod. Okay? All right. Now, the confusing part of that is that they name both places the same. Meribah was a name for this place and also the place that we read about in the account that Brother Al read for us on Sunday morning. But the other name for this place here in Exodus was what? Not just Meribah, but do you remember the other name? Massa, that's right. So the idea of murmuring, complaining, and contending with the Lord out of those two names. And so now let's go back up to the top of the page and read that chronology note. It is a little difficult to tell whether chapter 19 and verse 1 is saying the Israelites had been out of Egypt a full 3 months by the time they arrived at Mount Sinai, or if it is now into the third month. They left Egypt on the 15th day of the first month. By the time, they got all their belongings together, the 14th day was the Passover, and then, it would have been our 15th day, really, because how did the Jews, or how did the Israelites count time?
Well, from
sundown to sundown.
Yeah.
That's right. So, now, a little caveat here. They really weren't told that or didn't begin that until this was established, this Passover was established. Later, God tells them this is why it's established and this is why we're going to start your day at sundown. And so technically, it could have been still the 15th. It could have been the 15th when they left. But, I'm not going to quibble over a few hours. Anyway, they had arrived at Sinai in the third month. The point is not of great significance because the time difference would have only been a few days or a few weeks. And he's talking about a few days or a few weeks from the standpoint of whether it was beginning the third month or into the third month, whichever that was the case. Now the latter paragraph on notice as well is their faith needed time to grow. They needed time to learn to rely upon Jehovah to care for them when they were in need. But continue to watch their history to see if they learned the lesson. The murmurings do not stop. The people never learned to rely upon Jehovah. Let us learn the lessons they needed to learn from their mistakes. And so there's another point to be made, and I think it's really all wrapped up in this statement that they needed to learn to rely upon Jehovah to care for them when they were in need.
Yes.
And that other part is that they weren't warriors. They didn't have a standing army. They didn't have anyone to fight until God told Moses, get Joshua, too many J names, get Joshua to go select men to fight. And even at that, they were really just there to show up, weren't they?
Yeah.
Because the battle was of the Lord. And he fought the battle for them. And the signification was through, obviously, Moses and his outstretched staff and his arm. And so while they were down there in that wilderness of Sinai, Amalek came down there, and really Amalek thought, well, we've got them bottled up. We can keep them down here in this wilderness. And much like it was when Pharaoh came, he thought the land had swallowed them up. Here's this people wandering around. We've heard about them. Let's go strike right now before they organize themselves. And so they did, but they weren't planning on war. And so he took care of them, indeed, while they were in need. All right, so as you notice on page 43, the Wilderness say this, we're going to organize this and entitle this about making a covenant. Because that's the important thing that we see is that God is preparing, in chapter 19, he's essentially preparing Moses, Aaron, and the people to receive that covenant. And it takes a little time for that preparation to come about. So on the left-hand side of the page down there under Jehovah makes a covenant, he says the covenant is offered, the covenant is ratified, the covenant is broken, and the covenant is renewed. And all that happens in a period of days, initially. And then after that, we're going to learn about more time that they spent there at Sinai. And we'll get into those specifics of how that covenant was broken, and you already know what I'm talking about. We'll get there pretty soon. So let me read that first paragraph up there on page, top of page 43. Our organization of the text in this section is designed to emphasize that Jehovah was making a covenant with the Israelites. This is one of the most important sections of the Pentateuch. What's that mean? All five books. Okay. All right, so Genesis through Deuteronomy, right? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. That's the Pentateuch, first 5 books of the Bible. All written by Moses. All right. So this section is one of the most important sections of all 5 books, because from this section, the giving of this covenant on Mount Sinai flows all of Leviticus. Leviticus was simply the law.
Every detail.
Yes. And all of Deuteronomy. And Numbers deals specifically, with the people, the numbering of the people, but there's a good bit of law in there too. But it all begins right here on Mount Sinai. And so this is while he says this is one of the most important sections, in order to help us understand the whole law of Moses and through it to understand the rest of the entire Bible, it is necessary to see exactly what is happening in chapters 19 through 24 and then in chapters 32 through 34. Good bit of history and other things involved in chapters 25 through 31. But the most important sections here are those two, 19 through 21 and 32 through 34. Or 19 through 24, rather. Now, let me go back to this statement here. He says that we need to understand this in order to help you understand the whole law of Moses and through it to understand the rest of the entire Bible. Did you ever think about that? Did you ever think about the Bible being established? And I really think we can even go back to the 3 promises made to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12 and see really the establishment of the rest of the Bible and what's going to come about from there. Because there we have the promise of the land, we have the promise of the nation, and really they became a great nation even before they went into the land, didn't they? And then that seed promise, that third one. And we could have had a great nation, we could have had a great people, we could even have had a law, but without that third promise, you don't have anything further than that, really. Through their seed, all nations of the earth would be blessed. And I'm saying there from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, and on through that lineage. And so without that, we don't have Jesus coming to the earth. Without that, we don't have his teaching, his showing that the law of Moses would come to an end very soon. And then his death, burial, and resurrection, where he became the mediator of a new covenant, which took away the law of Moses. But we've got to understand all of that to see God's plan laid out and how all that comes to pass. And so when people tell you that it's really useless to study the Old Testament, they really don't know what they're talking about. George?
Well, we know that the Old Testament was a schoolmaster to bring us to Christ.
Yes.
It's a history of what happens to people who follow God and what happens when they fall away from God. It teaches us that.
That's right. That's right. And not only that, it shows us, as you have heard me say many times, it shows us that line that goes from creation to Revelation and shows how that God is in control and how he takes care of his people. We read about just a moment ago God taking care of his people when they were in need in Egypt, at the Red Sea, in the wilderness. That hasn't stopped. He still takes care of his people. And he does so wonderfully more than what he did through the old law, but he could not do that at that point in time because the time was not yet full. The people were not ready. This people that came out of Egypt, he used them to bring about his promise of the seed coming through that lineage. Any further questions or comments about that? Okay. So God offers to make a covenant with the Israelites. And that's occurs on Mount Sinai. Look at Exodus chapter 19 and begin that. They are moving. In that third month, they move from Rephidim to Sinai. And again, first day of the third month, 15th day, 29th day, it doesn't really matter. The third month of the Exodus. Now, what we do see in regard to dating is that when something is essential for his people to understand and to know, he gives the day and he gives the month. And he'll either tell from when the Exodus started, from the time they left out of Egypt, or later on he will date it by someone that's in rule. He will date that by Saul's reign. He will date that by David's reign, or by Solomon's reign, or whatever king in the divided kingdom. He will chronicle that. Chronicle. Remember that. And so then they camped in the wilderness before the mountain. Jehovah called Moses, and he went up, and he called him out on the mountain to give him a message for the people. And this is not the message about the Ten Commandments or anything about that. This is, again, preparatory to that. And so he said, the house of Jacob and the children of Israel. He mentions that in chapter 19. The house of Jacob and the children of Israel. Now, if this were a passage in, say, Isaiah, let's say Jeremiah. It'd be more likely for Jeremiah to combine these two. What would we be thinking about? The children of Israel and the people of Judah.
What would we be thinking?
Thinking about the coming of the Savior.
Okay. All right.
They're also in captivity.
Yeah. All right. So captivity suggests what period of time?
The divided kingdom.
The divided kingdom. That's right. But he's talking about a people that's still united. So we're not talking about that. He's using this as emphasis to say, my people. What was Jacob's other name?
Israel.
Okay. These are my children. These are my people. The house of Israel. The children of Israel. An emphasis of the same people. He says, I bore you on eagle's wings, and I brought you unto myself. If you obey my voice indeed and keep my commandment, then you shall be my people, and I will care for you.
There's that big word.
Yes, if. That's
word.
right.
Two little words.
And so he said in verse 4, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings, and I brought you to myself. Now then, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be my own possession among all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. Now, some of your translations may indicate there that he's talking about you will be my separate people from among all of the peoples of the earth. That's a good translation. That indicates that God has separated these people unto himself. Yes, Al.
New King James says, you shall be a special treasure to me above all people, for all the earth is mine.
Yes. Yes, and I think really that's the best translation. Where God is claiming them as his own special people. This is not the first time we've heard that, but it's important that he reiterate that to his people so that they'll understand this covenant's important. This covenant is our covenant. This covenant is between Jehovah and his people. And if we're going to be his people, we've got to keep this covenant. And so they say, oh yeah, we're going to do that. We will do that. So Jehovah talks about those that are his own possessions. Al just mentioned. He claimed the obedience of Israel to himself. Israel shall be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. We look at 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 9. What does he say there? Something very similar, right? But then he's speaking to what group of people? Christians, yes. He's talking to us. A royal priesthood. A holy people. A peculiar possession. And so, in the new covenant, now we haven't gotten there yet in our study, but in the new covenant, God says, this is my covenant with you. You are my people. And so we need to know that this is important. And I would even say it's more important than what God told Moses for the people to obey from the standpoint of eternal life. Now, you say, well, Moses and the people had to obey what God commanded for them, and that's right, they did, and their salvation was based on their obedience to that old law. Looking forward to Jesus. Scott?
God's desire or plan for creating man never changed. It's the same. Still the same today as you showed in the New Testament Christian. Grace, his own people and a kingdom. And it's just work. In his wisdom, he worked it out. And he had to keep teaching and keep teaching and keep teaching. And then we got to look back. And then we can make it all add up, and we can look back like we're doing now and go, oh, this makes sense. I see a big picture here.
Right.
So we can have greater faith and confidence.
Yes, that's right.
Pretty good plan.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Right, smart plan. Absolutely. Okay. Anything else before we conclude this evening? Yes, George.
I'm just going to say one thing in Romans you read about. How God looked at people who were alone to themselves and they were obedient in some respects to God. Cornelius, I guess, is a very good example. He wasn't accepted as an Israelite until the new covenant had been brought in and he was shown how to become part of that new covenant.
Good. Anything else? Okay, appreciate your attention, your comments this evening. We're going to start back with chapter 19 and verse 1 again on Sunday just to kind of get us moving through. I don't start in the middle of a passage, so let's be prepared for that then. Chapter 19.
That's where you get the Ten Commandments. That's where you find them anyway. Verse 20.
Mark your hymn books to number 335 for the hymn of invitation, following Brother Pace's invitation exhortation. 335, put a marker there. Now turn with me to number 453. 453. We'll sing this hymn before the exhortation. Ye are the light of the world. All three stanzas. O Christian, do not hide your light, for ye are the light of the world. But keep it trimmed and burning bright, for ye are the light of the world. For ye are the light of the world. For ye are the light of the world. Then keep your lamps all burning bright, for ye are the light of the world. Go show to all the path of right, for ye are the light of the world. Go bring the straying back to life, for ye are the light of the world. For ye are the light of the world. For ye are the light of the world. Then keep your lamps all burning bright, for ye are the light of the world. Oh, do not let your light burn low, for ye are the light of the world. But keep it bright and onward go, for ye are the light of the world. For ye are the light of the world. For ye are the light of the world. Then keep your lamps all burning bright, for ye are the light of the world. Brother Al.
Turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Jeremy in the class tonight has been talking about the preamble, if you will, to the law. God is preparing his people for a law. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, Paul is preparing people for a law.
Okay.
And he says, verse 1, Moreover, brethren, I do not want you to be unaware that all of our fathers were under the cloud, all passed through the sea. All were baptized unto Moses in the cloud and the sea. He's counting the passing of the children on dry land through the Red Sea as a baptism of sorts, because it did save them. It saved them from Pharaoh's army.
That's right.
All were baptized into Moses in the cloud and the sea. All ate the same spiritual food, manna. And all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. Also, God gave them water out of the rocks, as we remember. But with most of them, God was not well pleased, for their bodies were scattered in the wilderness. Now these things became our examples, to the intent that we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. Remember, we were talking about their murmuring. Seemed like at every opportunity, somebody led them astray, God would punish them. Moses would stand in the gap to try to save them, because God would have destroyed them all.
Right.
But Moses pleaded their case, and God atoned to that. And do not become idolaters as some of them were. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Nor let us commit sexual immorality, as some of them did, and in one day 23,000 fell. Nor let us tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted and were destroyed by serpents. He's relating why God punished Israel. And he's talking to Christians. And he's relating that whole thing to what a Christian should be doing under the new law. Nor complain, as some of them also complained and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now, all these things happened to them as examples. We were talking about why do we study the Old Testament? Well, there it is in a nutshell. It's to direct us, to let us see how God dealt with people, how he expected loyalty to his law, how he would punish those who broke it. And here we sit to a greater law than that. The Hebrew writer was explicit in why the new law is greater than the old law. They were written for our admonition and our learning, upon whom the end of the ages have come. We are in the last dispensation. There will be no new laws from the time that Christ said it is finished until the last day this earth stands. That law is in effect. And that's what Paul is trying to get us to see. And he says, therefore, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. We saw what happened with the children of Israel. We saw what happened with Moses when he refused, did a wrong thing, reacted in anger. That was written for our learning, that we should not do. So what will we do? Well, the Bible is pretty explicit in that we need to obey God. Jesus has left us commandments. Our job is to follow them and to help others do it also. Will we do it? I don't think the average Israeli got up out in the wilderness and said, well, today I'm going to murmur and I'm going to backbite against God and Moses. I don't think we get up in the morning intending to do evil. But inevitably, we fail. Therefore, the warning is very much to us.
Yes.
And if we think that we can stand better than they stood under the old law, Paul says, be careful. You'll fall too. If there's anyone in need of help with that very thing, this very night, please come as we stand and sing.
Live for Jesus, oh my brother, his disciple ever be. Render not to any other what alone the Lord should be. Live for Jesus, live for Jesus, give him all the has to give. On the cross the world's Redeemer gave his life that thou mightst live. Live for Jesus, wandering sinner, under Satan serve no more. Of the promise rise a winner, thou mayst be when life is o'er. Live for Jesus, live for Jesus, give him all thou hast to give. On the cross the world's Redeemer gave his life that thou mightst live. Live for Jesus in life's morning, at the noontide hour he is, and at eve when day is turning, and inherit endless bliss. Live for Jesus, live for Jesus, give him all the has to give. gave his life.